Okay, so we got that going. Good morning, Chuck.
Ah,
Okay,
Is it a
got
Zoom meeting?
yes,
Did they send you a link?
yes, I'm on right now.
Okay, so there should be things where they're recording it, so you should be
Yes.
able to see, scroll down farther. Scroll down.
I am.
There you go. There you go. So you need to start the video.
I did.
We'll start it again.
It says stop video there.
Okay, so you're on. There should
Yes,
be.
here's my picture.
Okay, then you need audio.
I need
No, we-
audio. Can anybody hear me?
No.
Can you hear us? We can hear you,
No,
Chuck.
Claude, can you hear Dane and Ron?
Yeah, I can hear you guys. I can hear
Okay.
Chuck too,
Chuck?
but good.
Yeah, Chuck, you're on mute now. Take yours off mute on the bottom left screen where it says audio. If you can click on that, Chuck, on the bottom left corner of your screen. There you go. Chuck, can you hear me
now
now?
say something.
Hello. It's
Hello?
Ask if, not if they hear you.
wave at me if you can hear me.
We
Okay,
see you.
Okay,
So
good.
tell them you're not hearing them.
I'm not hearing you.
You're not hearing me?
Let's see here.
So they need it. It's on their end.
Huh.
See if they're
Okay.
on mute. Are you on mute?
Are you on mute, Dane?
Let me look. Hold on. Let me see. 1 minute.
One
Should
minute.
be working.
Let me know if there's.
Okay.
Unmute. Okay, can you hear us now? No? Huh. Hey, Claude, can you hear
Yeah,
me?
I don't know why. I see everybody. It's fine.
Got
I
you.
just can't
I
get
got
my I just can't get my
Okay.
sound. Maybe we can just do it this way through the phone.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll work. Just stay on the phone
Yeah.
that way.
Hang on just a second.
Can
Oh,
you
yeah.
can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I don't know if you're gonna be able to hear everybody else.
Well,
We'll do the
yeah, I
best
don't
we
know why I
can here.
can't. Usually Claude can.
I can hear all of you guys.
Okay. We may have to do relay.
Hey,
So
coach,
Claude, you hear
coach
everybody?
your screen.
Yeah, we're still trying to get Stolski to get his camera down about 2 inches.
Yes, coach your screen.
Right there. There you go.
Away. You're better. There you go. Too
No,
much.
well, you went a little too far.
Okay, now let go and see what happens of the camera. Okay. Now just crouch down, crouching tiger. There you go. Right. Oh, it went down a little too much. You go up a little bit more there, Ron.
Perfect.
Just a hair.
The other way.
Up a little more. Up a little more. There you go.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Okay, now we had your audio, but now, oh wait, on the computer, Ron Stolski, if you could click on the bottom left corner of your computer screen where it says audio, and you can just unmute that. Do you see on the bottom left corner of your computer screen?
I've done that.
There we go. Now we got you. Now we're recording and we've got your sound and we got your video, but I don't know. Can you hear us on the computer screen, Ron?
I cannot.
You cannot. Okay. All right. Huh. I'm trying to think how we could fix that.
Claude, you got an idea?
Well, you could hear us earlier, couldn't you?
What's that, Claude?
You could hear us earlier on the call, on the
I can.
computer.
Go ahead, Claude, now.
Yes.
Can you hear me on the computer?
No, I can't hear you now.
I heard that, coach.
So he's on his phone, but he's having trouble getting audio to where he can hear us on the computer.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure this out. I don't want to
Can
do
use his
chat, do
phone.
I? No.
I'm trying to think how we could do a call in, because sometimes we can use it. Let me see if we can get a call in phone number and then we just have the video. That works sometimes. Hold on a sec. See. Hold on just a second. If we can get you to call in on a line, if I can get a call in number for you, Ron, where you could call in and then you're with us synced up through the phone, that might work. Hold on a second. let me get over here to my handy dandy calendar.
I think he's here on the phone.
Yeah, it's just nobody else can hear him that way. So if he can call in on his phone, that might work. I've done that before. Hold on a second. Let me see here. Just a minute. Let's see. Today, the 24th, we go in
Are you
here.
on this line, Ron?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm just trying to see where I can get a phone. I don't have a phone line that I can have you patch into. That's why I'm trying to I can patch you in that way. Let's see.
Dane,
Yeah.
Dane, when he put down the phone, I heard him clearly. The microphone on his computer should be picking up this conversation.
Yeah. It's just
I can hear you well,
so maybe we'll do it this
but
way.
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear.
No, I
you.
We'll just
can't
do it
hear
this way.
you.
Okay, so we'll just try it this way, Chuck. Hold on a second. So Chuck, say hi to Ron Stolski.
Hey, Coach, how you doing, buddy?
We finally meet. Well,
Hey, we
what a
do,
pro-
Coach.
well, yeah. Let's hope it
Good
has
to see
a
you. Yeah.
good conclusion.
Is everybody else okay? Can we hear everybody and all that, Dane?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, let's just move forward here. I think Ron Erickson would like to say a few words and then turn it over to you, Chuck, and let you kind of
You
do
bet.
the back. Go ahead, Ron.
I don't think, this is Ron Erickson talking. I don't think we need much in the way of introductions. Everybody seems to know each other through the process of getting this thing turned on. I think it's worth noting that Chuck Bowman is one of the real pros in putting these type of things together and other shows too. I can't think of anybody that offhand that's done more episodic television than he has, from starting way back with Baba Black Sheep and going to last season on Castle and so on. So he's a pro and knows what he's talking about. And I think he can kind of lead this thing today. I think there's a couple things I wanted to say. First of all, this is a very unique opportunity because most shows are simply that, shows, but this is sort of a franchise deal in that we think it has several different ways to put this thing together, and it's got pretty good legs under it. We think first the thing to do is to do a documentary, which we can do relatively inexpensively and so on. Then there's so many good side stories that we think it could be a series, maybe not a series in the 13 episode venue type thing, but certainly a few episodes anyway. And lastly, it certainly has great opportunity for a feature film. So over the next 3 or 4 years, we could be into something that's very, very substantial. It's important that you all understand how a documentary works, and Chuck will probably address this to some degree too. But with a documentary, and most of the stuff you're seeing on television, or an awful lot of what you see on television, is stuff that is produced and that is given free to the people that are airing it. Because our piece of the pie, so to speak, will come with advertising minutes. For example, if an hour show may have only 46 minutes of real show, and the other 14 minutes is commercials, we get half of that. So we get 7 minutes of commercial time. Or in the case of a show being 48 minutes, then we've got half of 12, which is obviously 6, and that becomes ours. Now, we don't have to go out and peddle this. There are brokers, guys like Dennis Holt and other guys that I've met, Terry Schunkweiler, that I've worked with in the past on little deals. Although, in matter of fact, I think Schunkweiler would be the one to talk to, because Dennis Long, I think, is retired. But in any event, that's how we get airtime, is by giving it free, which sounds kind of crazy, but believe me, if we got a good agent selling this commercial time, we're going to do just fine. That's about it for me. I don't have much else to say. I think it's a great project. When I first wrote it, I felt very comfortable about it. And those of you who have read what I wrote, please understand that that's just the first draft. There may be changes that we put in there that Chuck thinks should be amplified, or things that are unnecessary, and so on and so forth. So getting back to the B-roll is one of the biggest questions we have. What do we have in B-roll? And until we do a little bit of research, we're not going to know. But it's important that we have this meeting so that everybody's questions are answered, and so on. By the way, Dane Basham is not experienced in this, but he's a very experienced financial guy, having been at the helm of one of the biggest mortgage companies ever conceived in the United States. And so he's a real pro, and glad to have him aboard. And the second thing I wanted to address very briefly again is that one of the chores we have is finding a narrator for this show, and there are a few different names that we bounced around and are still kind of bouncing. So if you happen to think of somebody that you think is might do a wonderful job on this, don't hesitate to just shout it out, and we'll put it in the pile for consideration. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chuck Bowman.
Okay,
You awake there,
thank you,
Chuck?
Ron.
I'm
Thank
not
you.
waking you up.
Well, first of all, Coach, I don't think you've met Dane Basham, have you? Have you been introduced to Dane?
No, I have not, but
Yeah. He's a great friend to both Ron and I, and he has great enthusiasm. He's a very creative kind of guy, and he will march through this project with us. He is our primary investor right now. So the first job is to get up there and meet you and get you on camera. And the other person here, I'm not sure I know. Dane?
let me introduce him.
Okay.
I'll introduce Claude Allaire.
Oh, okay. You're the connection.
Claude is a superintendent of a charter school. He is a very close friend and colleague. Claude, I'm the exec director of football in Minnesota, and Claude is one of my key guys. And one of the things that he will bring to the table is Claude has conducted coaching clinics all over the country. Now we have one of the largest and best high school, but you name a head coach and Claude has some sort of contact with him. Beyond that, my favorite term for my good friend is shrink.
Shrink.
Because
Okay.
we've all been in meetings when it's pretty much over and we're all getting up and going our way, and Claude will say, well, how about this? And then we end up sitting down again.
Okay.
But
How about
Claude
this?
is very experienced in a number of areas, and he's a very professional and he's very bright. And it just dawned on me yesterday. We happened to have a meeting in the Twin Cities yesterday. And I really haven't mentioned this project. I did mention it to Claude, I think maybe a year ago or so. And on my way home, FYI, I live about 135 miles north of the Twin Cities in a beautiful area called Brainerd, Minnesota. 465 lakes in a 15-mile radius. 20 golf courses, all Tom Lehman, blah, blah, blah. So our community is about 25,000, but in the summer it's about 125,000. It's the place to go in Minnesota. So anyway, that's a brief introduction to Claude. And it just struck me driving home. I thought, looking forward to this meeting, I thought, maybe I should call Claudie and see if he'd like to sit in, because I know that he and his wife Suzette are very, very successful. But more than that, I know that he would have things to bring to the table.
Super. Super. Claude, hi.
Hey,
Welcome.
guys, it's great to be here, Ron. Thank you. I will be sending you my shrink bill.
Shall I go over some of the structure that we need to start talking about? Because we've
Please.
got to structure this in broad strokes, and then we'll get down to things that we will discover as we get into this. And one of the things that we need to do is to make sure that we have enough characters, we have enough story background, and my God, the thing about this story, Ron, is you have more story than we'll have time for. So most of this is going to have to hit highlights. And I've written some questions down that I'll throw out on the table, and you can help. Now, first of all, our goal here is to make a doc on you and your career. And I'm wondering, from what I understand, when you first came out of college and you were looking for a coaching job, as I understand it, you ended up on an open field where there was no football field. It was just a field, no goalpost and all that. And then the head of the school, or the superintendent of schools, came out and met you there, and you asked him questions. I'd like to capture that moment if I can find some, a couple of guys who can play that role for me in this documentary. And we don't have to do any dialogue. We'll save that for the movie. But I need the pictures. I need the visual of somebody being you, maybe one of your young grandsons, something like that, can be out there in an open field if you can find one for me. And then I'd like to know now what was on your mind as you saw that for the first time. What did you see for the future of Coach Ron Stolski when you were there on that first meeting? Can you tell us briefly?
Sure. First of all, I'm a North Minneapolis kid who started coaching parkboard football at 13. I went on to college and played college ball, and knew in my heart of hearts that I wanted to be a football coach. Had a very fairly successful career in a Division III college, and was offered some assistant jobs in bigger schools, but I wanted to be a head coach. So a friend who was whatever, I made my way to this little town called Kensington, Minnesota. By the way, it is home of the rune stone, and legend has it that was where a stone was discovered under an oak tree that indicates that the Vikings were here long before Christopher Columbus. So I drive in an old wreck of a car, which I still have. I mean, I have wrecks. And up Highway 55, I had a powder blue suit on that I had worn to my junior prom. We had no money. My wife and I, we had our second daughter. Get to Kensington. It's 2 blocks long, and the school was at the end of Main Street. So I walk into the school, just full of dreams, and I meet a man immediately who is dressed in a nice suit and a fedora hat. And I walked up to him to introduce myself. I said, "Are you Mr. Roasted?" "Roasted?" He said, "Hell no," he says. "I'm Arthur Anderson. I'm the maintenance man here. I used to be a janitor, but now they call me." He said, "You're looking for Tug." And I said, "Well," he said, "that's the super. He's right down the hall there." So I walked down and I met a man, powerful Finlander, cigarette in his mouth, patches on his jeans, a flannel shirt. He says, Stolski, he says, "You're here for that football position then?" I said, "I am." He said, well, let's go into my office, young Stolski. And so as we walked into his office, I noted a extension cord hanging from his waist, and it was bouncing on the wood floor of this old school. So he sits down, an old rocker, had a pad on, plugs himself in, takes a drag on his cigarette and says, hemorrhoids, he says, God damn, that feels good. He had a heating pad taped to his butt. Okay.
Yeah.
So we talked a bit, and he said, I suppose you want to see the field then? I said, I do. Well, we walked out the back door, gravel road, and preface this all the way up on Highway 55, going through small towns, Minnesota. I saw fields with lights and this and that, and you know how football would be. So we started walking across this field. Now it was late May, so the weeds were pretty much under our armpits. And there's a grove of trees. And I'm thinking, well, the field is behind that grove of trees. And we stopped in the middle. He says, well, this is it, he says. I said, this is what, Mr. Rose said. He said, this is the field, Stolski. I said, but there are no goalposts. Well, he says, we haven't scored a touchdown in 5 years, sir. So I said, well, that explains no scoreboard. He says, oh, we don't need that. He says, but I said, this doesn't look 100 yards long. Well, hell, he says, we never measured it, but in the fall we mow it. This is not fact check. So we go through it, and he says, I want you to meet the chairman of the board, then, Stolski. So we go south of town and we meet a man named Maynard Spilseth, who was plowing. It's great farm country, real cold black, and Maynard was on his disking for spraying on his tractor, and he gets off, and this is when I learned about small town politics. So Maynard gets off, and he's got snuff, of course, stout man, and he says, so Tug, that was Elmer's nickname, says, Maynard, I want you to meet young Stolski here. He's here for that football position. Maynard Spilseth looked at me, and he stared right at me like I'm staring at you. And he said, Stolski, what religion are you then? Because here's the deal. I had been raised Catholic, but when my wife and I married, I didn't want to split, and so I changed to Lutheran. And as luck would have it, I said Lutheran. He looked at Doug and he said, looks good enough to me. Because here's what you learn. All of the small towns are built on grain elevators. And the guy that owned the grain elevator was a Catholic named Richard Green. And there was one restaurant in town, and that was Ray Dvorak, and he happened to be Catholic. Everybody else was Lutheran. So as long as I was Lutheran, I looked good to him. Now there's backstory to it all, but that's when we finally won our first. I do have to go through this. So at our first practice, I'd come up in the summer. They had old shoes that were full of mud and stuff, and boy, I had dreams. And so for our first practice, I was planning 2-a-day practice, right? Football. 3 kids show up. Paul Belgum, Ronnie Blair, and David Spilseth, Maynard's boy, who had never played football, but he was a great little shooting guard. 3 kids. So I went to Tug. I said, God, we got to get on the phone here. Now it was 8-man football. So I ended up with 13 kids. But for our first game, only 11 showed up because two got a job hand. Well, we lost our first 3 games because Paul Belgum had pneumonia. But lo and behold, Paul comes back on homecoming. And we play Brandon, Minnesota, and beat them 56-0. Easy in 8-man football, you got some stallions. Now, we had Larry Light Lunch Lannis, who was our right tackle, and Larry weighed 296, and he could put 80-pound gallons of milk on Dad's truck. But here's the deal. So in the meantime, my brother and I had built the goalposts. So we had goalposts. We did not have a scoreboard. We win the game. Tug and I are dancing a jig in the middle of the field. All the town is there, maybe 80 people. And Vern Johnson, who owned the bowling alley, there was 4 alleys, but Vern had, contrary to Ray, he had 6 stools where he'd serve lunch. And Vern Johnson went crazy and he said, hamburgers for the whole damn bunch. And so there we marched, our 13 kids and the town, to Vern Johnson's bowling alley for hamburgers. We never lost another game that year or the next. Then I moved on. And when I moved on, there was a lighted field and a stadium of sorts. So that's the beginning.
Good.
Ron, if you,
Ron, can you reach up?
I can't hear you.
Tilt back the screen, tilt it forward, away from you, just a little bit. There you go. That's it. Thank you. That's it. That's fine. Now we see you better.
Yeah, not much to see.
Ron,
Okay, let me go on. Do you have something to say, Ron? Erickson?
yeah, if Ron has read the Stolski story that I wrote.
Yeah, that you sent some time ago.
Okay, so most of that stuff I think that you talked about is in there, but if there's anything that I have missed, for sure, let me know later and I'll add it.
Well, that was the beginning. Now I just have a couple of well, no, I'll let Chuck talk here. I've got a couple of questions here.
Okay. All right. Here's a couple of things. And you also have a story about, did you and your brother build those players' benches, or did the kids?
No, there were some old benches that the farmers sat on.
Gotcha.
And I asked Tug about that. I said, oh, hell, he says, Stolski, we don't win anyway, so just let them sit there.
Okay.
And I said, well, no. So what we did is we put clothesline around the entire field. No, yeah, and that kind of kept them out. Yeah, there was another incident in the middle of that season when we started a game against. It was the second year against a team that had just beat us 68-0 my first year. And the game started, and we drove, and we were on about the 3-yard line. And Tug comes running by me, huffing and puffing. He said, did the game start? I said, yeah. He said, it can. I'm the timekeeper. He had a stopwatch. He said, we got to start over. Yeah, 20-19. Now, here's the backstory. Tug was really a good leader. I learned a lot from him. I learned about salesmanship. He would go down to Army surplus in Minneapolis, and he'd come back with the World War II leather pilot helmets.
Yeah.
Every farmer in Douglas County had one of those on for fall plowing. No, but I learned from him. I learned a salesman thing from him. And let me tell you this story. You know, in schools, they have faculty lounges, which we only had 13 people on the faculty, K through 12. That was it. And there was an old couch down in the boiler room. Oh, by the way, there's just too much here. And I would go down there. I didn't smoke or anything like that. And we had gallons and gallons and gallons of wax for the floors. Mm-hmm. So one day I asked Mr. Rosted, I said, why all those gallons of wax? Well, he said, I buy them. Yeah. But do we need that? Well, he said, you know, Chet Snyder comes by. He was a salesman. He came every month. And he sells it to me. And I said, well, do we need it all? No, he says, but he's here every month asking me about other stuff. And I like him.
There you go.
Years later, I was delivering a speech to a major garment dealer. And I told him that lesson. Here's what it was. One, Chet Snyder showed up every month, whether he sold anything or not. Two, he had a product, and even though it was, if Tug didn't buy that time, he sold him a pair of shoulder pads. And three, Tug liked him.
Yeah.
Isn't that great? That's a great message. Show up. Anyway, that's enough of that.
Yeah, show up. There you go.
That's more than you
Coach,
needed, guys.
I was
Yeah.
wondering in those first couple of towns that you worked in, Kensington, where'd you go from Kensington?
I went, you know, I never applied for another job. I got phone calls. I went to Slayton, Minnesota, which is in southwestern Minnesota. Then I got a call
How
from
long were you
Princeton,
at the
Minnesota.
Kensington?
I was there 6 years.
Okay.
We were quite successful. Then I got a call from a brand new high school in the suburbs of Minneapolis. They were building a new high school, and they called me. And I opened the school, and we were very successful.
Was that Princeton?
No, that was Park Center. I was at Princeton for 6 years, then Park Center, where we had some great players.
Gotcha.
And there I developed relationships with one of my very dearest friends, Steve Nonick, who was my defensive coordinator.
Right.
After 4 years at Park Center, I got a call from Brainerd, Minnesota, and I came up as the athletic director, football coach for 45 years. Yeah.
There you go.